Hello and welcome to the Design and Technology panel of the GençYaratıcı Festival. I'm Gökhan Mura. I am an academic at the Visual Communication Design Department of the Faculty of Fine Arts and Design at Izmir University of Economics. Today I have two distinguished guests to talk about art, design, technology, and creativity. Q Lee is a motion graphics designer, a creative director, and she teaches also at the Faculty of Communication at Izmir University of Economics. And she is also the art director of this GençYaratıcı Festival. And Refik Anadol is a media artist and a director living and working currently in Los Angeles. So hello. Thank you very much both and for joining me. And I would like to talk about your work and your creative journeys today. I mean, your journeys actually separately represent two opposing types. Q started her career as a fine arts student and then finally moved to Turkey from US to work as a designer. And now she teaches with us at the university. And Refik started as an artist and designer in Turkey and ended up in US to work as an artist and director currently. So there's two opposing journeys that we can talk about. But Refik, let me begin with you. I would like to start with you. I mean, we have a common history.
Yes, a mentor, a professor that I've been getting my first degree in MFA. Yeah, that was a wonderful, wonderful time in Istanbul Bilgi University.
Yes, and I didn't want to mention it only as a proud instructor to see your successes, but also just to let everybody know that I have been witnessing the origins of your international work, how your ideas developed in time. I've been following your work as an artist, and I've seen how you have come to the place you are now. And so you have been producing and exhibiting artwork for over 10 years now, and you have been doing data sculptures and data paintings and immersive installations. And they are all in communication with the designed environment, actually, which is very interesting for all of us. Can you tell us how you define what you do in your own words?
Yes, happy to. First of all, again, super happy to be here sharing. And again, Gökhan Mura, as he said, he was literally one of our wonderful minds, at least for my own experience at the Visual Communication Design at MFA program. It was a very important days for my career because there was a time I was truly understanding like what to do next. Because undergrad, as many of us knows, it's a journey, but truly after undergrad, which is the grad studies, is I think where the ideas truly shaped. At least back in time when I was just understanding what to do next in the career. So I was super sure about those times that I would love to embed media arts into architecture. Like specifically, I was super inspired by architecture as a canvas and light as a material. But I wasn't 100% sure what exactly to do with the data back in like 10 years ago. So 2011, I had an interesting dialogue between the Istanbul Biennale team and Tülay Güngen, who is the director of Yapı Kredi Cultural Center. And she was looking for an art piece during the Istanbul Biennale, but she was looking for something provocative in terms of the media architecture. But she was also like trying to say that she'll be like something really fresh, something really exceptionally provocative and speculative in the design perspective. So I was that day that I was just thinking like if it's a piece in Istiklal Street in Istanbul, which is one of the most significant space of the city's vital collective memories, from the good, the bad, any kind of memory we can talk about, I think is there. So I thought like what will happen if an artwork truly thinks about its environment, like imagines where it's located, has a camera, an eye and an ear, like a microphone, that have this symbiotic relation with the environment. So that's where I decided to work with data, I can say, in my work. So 9 years ago now. That was the first time collaborating with Alper Derinboz, and architect friend who truly helped me to shape this whole idea and turn it into a physical piece. So it was my first art and architecture and technology and truly like using data in public space context. And the artwork was a three-dimensional surface augmented by a projection. But before that, also in 2009, during Bilgi University undergrad studies, I was working with architecture of the Central Istanbul, Contemporary Art Center and Surface. And then I took off this journey to right now where I am, I guess. So 9 years, started using custom software development in my work, meaning it's a VVV, it's a VVVV, 4V. It's a kind of a semi-open source software. It's allowing you to create visual programming language. It's not a code base, it's just purely visual language that you can create really complex ideas. And then the data like took off in my work as a pigment, as a material, as a mean of expression since then, 9 years now.
Yeah. And yes, and that's actually, that's a frame that would help us to discuss your work, and which I see your work in two levels in relation to technology actually. So I have two related questions on the role of technology in your work and the impact of your technology on art and design. And let me ask the first one first. What do you think is the direct impact of technology on your work? I mean, technology as a material and technologies that actually define your methodologies of work. What's the direct contribution, how you put it?
I think it's a great question because first of all, I think my vision of future is first of all, at least as an artist, that the idea that, I mean, we are surrounded with the systems and the technologies that are completely using data as a communication medium, right? Like there is no way a system of technology can survive without a data set. So that's like how they create their own reality. That's how they like communicate, create meaning in their own territory, right? So I'm obsessed with these systems and their like internal logistics, but I'm not obsessed with the idea of recovering data. I'm not obsessed with like making a more readable, more understandable data. I am more about speculating the data as a medium and data as a kind of a pigment, a kind of a material that can be used as a mean of gesture. So once I think about this world, I found that the technology is eventually the hardcore, like the grounding legs of the imagination. And simply, there is no way to use data without algorithms. So that part, I think, purely driven by technology. But recently, I think maybe the last now 4 years, I started working with machine intelligence, meaning AI algorithms. 2016, I was fortunate to work with one of the wonderful minds of Google artists and machine intelligence team, which were based in Seattle, and they were looking for a speculative idea of using artists in their team and train the artists who are looking for how to use AI and let them start their journey. So I was super fortunate to work with one of the pioneers of the AI research field and train myself and my entire team. By the way, I'm not alone anymore. I am a 12 people of team and we can speak 12 language and our median age is 25. And that's one of the reasons, I guess, what we are doing is not for certain age or group. We are doing works for any age, any background, and any culture. Like we are unbiased as much as and borderless as possible while imagining these experiences. So the technology, I think, is a binding idea because technology is pretty much reaching everywhere in the world in an equally okay world, at least the systems. But anyway, the AI part was really exciting because AI really pushed the boundaries of imagination, because with AI, meaning the data is not only just numbers, but they have meaning right now. And AI gives the context to this data and discourse. Like basically suddenly these images, these numbers became much more meaningfully connected, clustered. And that's my new, I think, obsession, which is now 4 years. I mean, my first half of the career maybe was pure data as an input, as numerical information and time-based. The second half, which is last 4 years, is giving a meaning to data with AI. So right now, technology in that context is machine intelligence. I can talk about more.
Okay, so I mean, you opened up a new alley now before the second question of the impact of technology. Then I would like to ask you about the types of data. I mean, I clearly understand your point of view from processing pure data first, and then now you're trying to employ machine learning algorithms to make meaning out of data. But within here, I think there's also a separation. There's two levels within this meaningful data based on, again, your latest works. I mean, I do see your works that you collect wind information, for example, from the Boston airport, or the information of the flow in the sea in Bosphorus in Istanbul. So this is still a numeric data to me, but you are also doing a huge interpretation of photographs, which are actually individually meaningful as data. As data pieces, they have individual meanings, they have semantic meanings anyway. And then you have actually re-rendering their meaning through AI. That, I think there is also a separation there that opens new discussions as well.
That's very true. And I think especially once we tap in the data and the memory context, because I think at least in my humble journey, what I learned is data itself is also a memory point in life, because it's storing an information in humanities in some certain capacity. And in that context, photography is a memory of some kind of a subjective experience of someone's memory. But then I just thought that what will happen if you use AI for not subjective experience, but objective experience of a city or of an organization such as LA Philharmonic, which is a LA-based Philharmonic orchestra, and we look at their 100 years of memories, or city of New York, Berlin, Stockholm, Seoul. Like, we look at the cities and their collective memories as an image archives from the social networks and cluster them as a mean of collective memory. And then what happened, I guess, in those last 4 years of journey, the photography became a representation for a machine, which is more, I think, reliable, or let's say less subjective than a numeric data that can be anything. Because the more images, which is the photographic archives, became more obsolete for the machine, the more the narrative that I think, at least as a cinematic experience, became much more grounded. And I think the audience became much more connected because the narrative became much more relevant, not anymore just abstraction, but also ground truth, saying, okay, this image archive is coming from the city of New York, and every single image ever collected in social networks right now here in my experience. And there's no selfies, nothing personal, but purely the things that are beyond humans, let's say. And then you have this like really exciting data universe, a universe that you can create a new narrative inside. And I think that's where my personal journey really turned into something very interesting. And at least in the Hollywood point of view, I can tell that this was much different leap in the career that inspired people like Ridley Scott to Spielberg to many others, which was unexpected in the design and architecture and all these point of views, which I didn't think about it in the beginning.
Yeah. Yes, I think we will see examples of more intervention from AI into this kind of collective memory processings in the future of the cinema, and these days are coming, I hope, sooner than later. So I think we should get ready for a totally different type of viewing experience in the cinema salons. Now I can ask the second question about the impact of technology after this parentheses, but there's also an indirect impact of technology in your work on the design environment. I mean, the technologies that you are working with, your works are augmenting the already existing spatial experiences. So you are applying a new type of image onto already existing design environments, which in return changes the complete meaning and the spatial experience of that building, like the LA Philharmonic or the interiors that you have placed your data sculptures in. So we are immersed in a completely different experience. And what do you think about this indirect impact on already existing design environment of your works?
That's a really great question, because I think what I'm finding a connection between all these ideas, at least they are grounded, is they're all somehow find a body in an architectural space. Mm-hmm. Like there can be in a public piece, a public art lobby in in San Francisco that you can step inside freely, or it can be a cultural beacon, Disney Hall or DDP in Seoul. Like they're like really the buildings that people are thinking as the cultural artifacts, like cultural beacons. But they're also, I think, perfect spaces where these ideas can survive, because they are, I think, designed, and I hope they're designed for this, depicting the future of not only performing arts, not only architecture, but everything pretty much humanity can create. I think, at least that's what I'm understanding it, when the idea connects with the cultural foundation of the idea, like LA Philharmonic as an institution, DDP as a design, design institution, or Salt Archive in Istanbul, an archive and library looking for, expanding their experience in near future. I always find the same similar positivity in there, because it's not just shiny pixels. It's not just bunch of pixels moving with a aesthetic reason, but there's a function as well in them. Like, for example, in Disney Hall, the question, like, can a building learn? Like, can it dream? It's a speculation. And if to really answer this question, we create a largest data set ever probably created for such a type of installation. And we really look for every single memory of the building, including the camera recordings, like everything. And then for DDP, similar, like we look at the cell as a whole input, or in machine hallucination as New York as a whole input. Like once we have this, I think, grounding context in the stories, I'm calling them stories because they're not just installations. So we create this hybrid, I think, ideation. There's a space for sure as a canvas, there's a big data, and there's technology and science to really collide all this imagination. But at the end, what you are feeling is an experience. It's not something that I think belongs to just a gallery or a museum. It just goes beyond, I think, the journey of art in the past centuries. It doesn't fit there. It just becomes, it gets out of that boundaries. And that feeling, I guess, by the way, no offense to any medium, but I feel like going to a museum or gallery, I feel it's so 21st century, because you open a door and you open a door, and behind that door there's art, is something I feel like very very biased experience. And that's one of the reasons I enjoyed these interventions. Like they are just speculation, and it's light. It can go. You don't need to like really think about what will happen next, because it's just light, like the sun. So I mean, sun is dangerous. If it goes, we are in a danger. But yeah, like this kind of, I think, augmentations gives a new function to spaces, and they become like a new form of architecture. Because first of all, I also believe that one of the fundamental problem of architecture, at least physical architecture, is it's biased with materials, right? Like concrete, glass, and steel. But once this imagination goes beyond these materials, it doesn't fit inside these norms. So using light as a material allows, I think, me and many creatives to expand the universe of imagination.
I'm waiting for the day, actually, maybe in your next projects, that you actually join the team of architects to design the building from scratch, thinking of your additions as well. So that might be a new thing to enjoy, I hope, that rather than redefining the already existing space, maybe we can have you included in the creative process from the beginning, so that the walls or the surfaces,
that would be amazing. I mean, very openly, there are several research projects going on with some certain architects. But what is very exciting is, I mean, for Disney Hall project, I can say, Frank Gehry, I mean, one of my hero, and he was saying like, oh, they told me that this building cannot be augmented because the surface was too reflective, because there is not location for projectors. He is definitely right, by the way. These are one of the challenging, like, you can't believe how hard to project a compound curvature, which is shiny, finding a best spot to shine the light that goes to the eyes of the audience without losing the quality of brightness and the resolution. So at the end, there's a narrative and concept, but at the end, the execution should be as good as possible to feel the idea, right? So you cannot like differentiate. I mean, designing the cable pet, like 4-kilometer fiber optic signal cables, as important as a narrative, because if there's no cable pet, if you don't send a signal, there is no story. So like they're all connected to each other. And that's the interesting part, because it became like a movie. Like it becomes like everyone working for one idea, one moment, and one reality. So there's this very similar connection between designing a production of a movie or designing it's beyond just an art experience. I sometimes feel about it. But you are very right about the augmenting architecture. One of the feedback that I got that day from one of my hero, Alejandro Inharritu, and he's one of my hero. And I watched Blade Runner while I was 8 years old. And I think even you remember in my thesis, we were discussing Blade Runner back in time. And that movie and its impact in my mind and being in downtown LA, like, because Blade Runner was 2019 November, right? Depicting Los Angeles. And I am in that city and that moment and augmenting one of those buildings. It was just this magical moment in life, like a dream ideas and a building in downtown. And he came and said something very unique and said, it's the first time I'm feeling that I can touch a science fiction idea. It's the first time I'm not seeing a CG. I'm not seeing a fake experience, a synthetic experience, he's calling it, something like that. But it's not with a machine or another thing. I'm with my eyes, with myself, walking in the street, and I'm seeing something real. So that was a really great feedback. Like, wow, that's like, I don't think like that. It's just a sci-fi, a moment in life, in real time, happening in front of you.
Yeah, that's great.
But I think it's also interesting that you find the data everywhere in the building. You collect those data and you're projecting into the building, and then people are become experiencing part of the data too. I think that is amazing experience that you are doing.
Thank you. And I think that part, like being aware of where the data comes from in that context, the building itself, the building's memories, like the events happened in the building. I think that was a very fresh chapter for my mind, but also in the field, because I was looking, I mean, the field of projection mapping is all over the world. I mean, being first in Turkey doesn't mean that the field was, I mean, back in time, maybe Gökhan, you remember there was a speculation, like, is it the future of imagination, is the future of, some people were saying, well, it won't go anywhere, but there was lots of debates, right? But at the end, it became a medium. I think it's now accepted by many people. But what was missing is like the narrative. Like, there was beautiful projections, there was beautiful ideas, but the data part, I think, as you said, that you know it's coming from the builder that you are looking for. Exactly. I think that was like the fresh trick, not a trick, not a, maybe narrative trick we can call it for the audience who are looking for cinematographically, but that's the feeling people felt, all right, I'm looking at this building and this is the data comes from itself, was a grounding. I think
gives a fresh meaning to data. I mean, it is actually participatory data, as we can call it, maybe, because it's the viewer is there, but she is also part of the data herself. So it's kind of participatory creation, co-creation of data and the viewer at the same time. So it's an interesting phenomenon, actually. That is only you do that.
By the way, the reason I'm saying trick is it came from the mayor, Garcetti, from LA, Los Angeles mayor. He was in the gala night and he said, like, he was calling this a trick because in a good way, in a positive way, like a Houdini way. It's the best public trick I saw, that a cultural beacon for a couple of hours at night turned into something. And he's saying in a good way, I believe, because he hired a helicopter to shot the piece for live at the TV nationwide. Yeah, that was interesting. That was a really interesting moment from the mayor perspective. People from any age, any background, like their families, dogs, like animals, they're coming together, watching something free for everyone. I think these are really important aspects of an, I think, experience.
And Q, you didn't live in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, actually, I was living in Los Angeles for 6-7 years.
Oh, wow. Which part?
From New York to Los Angeles, and I moved back to New York. But I was exactly thinking the same thing, how he did put the projector in that Disney, the Philharmony, because I don't believe there's a tall building around that.
Yeah, that's
right now, it's a 10, I'm talking about 20 years ago, but you know, back then there's no tall buildings around. So I was amazed. And then after hearing your story, it's very interesting. The idea of the story from the each part of the building and create the data and projecting onto the building, and then people are watching it and they're enjoying it and creating all this empathy, I mean, empathize with the people, with communicating. I think that is amazing experience that you are studying, you are creating.
Thank you very much.
I'm very excited to see your work with my eyes in the future.
Thank you, thank you. By the way, if I can share my screen, happy to show you the slides.
Yes,
if
I think that's a great
you want to see.
Yeah.
But I think a host needs to give a permission for the sharing screen.
Yes, I think we have the host, Utkan, can help us in that sense. That can you allow Refik to share his screen? And while we are doing so, maybe we can also shortly listen to Q about her journey from Korea to US and then back to Turkey. So what happened there? How was your journey? How do you define what you do? And
my journey, I mean, you know, I studied fine arts from very young age for art school and university. I studied sculpture, and then when I having the final senior year show, I found myself is very limited to communicate with people. Limited to show what I'm feeling is too subjective that people cannot really understand. So I was trying to find a way. I was more looking into how can I communicate more with the public, more audience. So when I went to US, I wasn't really planning to study communication. I was going for the art history, but then I end up going to the Pratt and then study visual communication. And then I really enjoyed that master program. I learned a lot, and there was the art like 2000. And then that period, the motion graphic is coming. And then I was so amazed by the graphics moving around. It's not just still image. I just create the poster, but with this medium, I can make this poster moving, and I can make people through the journey of the story, the still story in the poster. So from there, I start to work in the post-production company, motion graphic company, and then that's where I was in Los Angeles for working for Universal Music. And then I was kind of lucky for work for them because they are creating the new channel, new brand. So they just like, Q, do whatever you want. So that in there, I just create the graphics with my background, which is the fine arts. So it's not just the graphic. My graphic design, if you look at it, it's more, that's that. And then I was working for broadcasting, creating a channel ID and all that stuff. And then I start to work for the one company. I'm against animal testing for certain cosmetic, certain brand they use animal. So I decide not to work for those companies because I don't want to promote. I don't think it's ethical. So I start to create my own company with my husband. And then, by the way, my husband is Turkish. And then from New York, I moved to Istanbul. When he is from Istanbul to New York, Los Angeles, I'm from there and moved to Istanbul. And Istanbul, we create small studio. It wasn't easy to create a studio company and working, but I end up producing Ayapım opening and Karadari opening title sequence, Son and Hatırla Günü, like a couple of more. But I love this storytelling motion graphics. I think it's kind of grabbing the people's attention, and I think it communicates better in certain ways. And I think the motion graphics or graphic design or any arts, the more people understand, the more we create empathy with people. I think it's better communication with people, better understanding. So, and also it's better to solve the problem when I working, graphic design, when we get the work from the brand or corporate and they come up with a huge problem, we want to do this. But if you don't understand, before you look into the problem, they give it to you. But I think you need to really understand who they are first to solve the problem. So that was my story from fine art to the graphic design, and I'm in Izmir and then teaching at school. So that is another whole new journey that I just started here.
It is an exciting one. I mean, from one port to another, and from in between different cultures and different visual worlds.
I never knew that I'm gonna speak another third language in my life, and I speak Turkish.
Very good. Now, maybe we can see some of your work, Refik. And
can I share?
I don't know. I am not the host. So, yeah.
If you can.
Yes, now we can see it. And
I think Ku was asking about like the projection setup, right? That was the last question I remember. I mean, this is the Mini Madness. So what you are seeing is 13 unique locations. Each of them is from top view. Maybe you remember there was this parking lot next to the Disney Hall.
I remember, yeah.
So the good news is that building is also Frank Gehry building. And now it's dismantled and becoming a high rise. And the good news, the project is becoming permanent. So the idea will...
that's great. Bravo. Congratulations. Really.
Thank you very much. So that was...
Great.
Thank you very much. That was the only building available to make this happen. And that was a historical 30 years of temporary parking lot. Get a permission. And the very right side is a music center where the corner of the other opera and theater house was used to augment each side of the building. So that was just like a quick answer to that question without like taking too much time. That was the thing I want to show you.
Thank you very much. I mean,
Thank you.
This actually also shows creativity is not only a mental process that you just imagine and just sit down, but you have to also work a lot to solve a lot of problems, and you have to create, you have to creatively solve all the problems that arise. And this is the data you are collecting.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we had, I mean, the first data was the building itself, because that's the 3D model of the building, which is originally designed in 2002 with a program called CATIA. So we took the original model of the building and transcoded into a whole new contemporary softwares, which is I mean, we are jumping 17 years ahead of the software, which was a very big challenge, 3 months of modeling and reconstructing the surface and many things. And the other thing was, of course, the image archive, like every single performance ever done, and the reaction of the AI, how it understands and gives context to this data, which eventually turned into these clusters of images. What was really inspiring that AI, at least 4 years ago when I started the journey, one of the most inspiring thing for me was AI can cluster data in some certain categories. And this was really unique because AI is giving a context to image archives and clustering them by similarities, showing the things we cannot show, because I don't think as humans we can look millions of images in a given time. So like, it's a really interesting perspective opening and a mind opening experience that you can see the connections between the points and the images and the events and things like that. And then not only that points becomes an image archive, but you can cluster them to create sculptures. And the meanings of those images and the collective memories are becoming now a sculptural experience, a virtual experiences. And this was really very inspiring. And then even the sound, not only images, if you let the AI listen 70 years of every single music ever recorded, you can even create these three-dimensional colorful universes, which I'm calling a data universe. And in here, we are watching 10 seconds of clips of every single musical archive material clustered in XYZ dimensions, but also red, green, and blue colors based on the similarities, which now it's 6 dimensions. And you create this like these really playful and exciting forms.
Each bubble in this composition is a piece of music.
Yes, 10 seconds of experience.
Amazing. And it's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Like generally what I found, at least in my personal work, that I found a big leap in 4 years ago when the AI comes in the game, the imagination really enhanced and became something different. So I heavily advise for designer friends or creative minds to really look for this field. It's extremely rewarding.
Thank you very much, Refik, and thank you very much, Q. I mean,
Yes,
for this wonderful and inspiring experience and talk, and I wish we can continue doing it so. I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
I wish I could see more work of this and, you know, how it really is.
Thank you. And thank you, Gökhan, for the beginning journey and inspiring and encouraging, which is very important in those days. In Istanbul, especially while researching the field, not everyone was encouraging from the faculty, very openly saying this. Some people were in the other direction saying, like, why do you need that? Like very openly saying there was a critic debate on, like, is this the field? Is this a medium? Do you really need, like, versus Gökhan was in the encouraging part of and pushing the imagination. So thank you for the encouraging support in the very early days, which is very important.
Thank you very much. And luckily I have done that work now. So thank you very much, both of you again. And
thank you.
We will meet in another session somewhere. Time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful week, and great to meet you, Ko, as well. Bye bye.
Great to meet you, Refik. Bye bye.